Welcome back. It's 6:40 in the morning. You're watching and listening to GB News Breakfast with Patrick and me, Emily.
OK, so let's take a little look, shall we? Some of the newspaper front pages. I mean, there's quite a lot going about today, actually. So The Times is reporting on Jeremy Hunt's struggle to secure funds for a 2p personal tax cut in the budget. The Telegraph leads on Hunt's plans to combat excess civil servants in the upcoming budget. Is war on woke?
Yes, The Observer reports on top economists warning the Chancellor that his planned tax cuts will backfire.
And The Mirror has raked up the Prince Andrew row again. They're saying he's facing new questions in secret papers that are set to be released, and they have obviously furnished that article with a picture of him and Jeffrey Epstein.
They have indeed. And The Sun says the royals are in crisis as it emerges that Queen Camilla is taking a holiday.
Yeah, bless her. Well,
Where's she going?
Well, that's the big myth, isn't it? The Daily Star leads with Meghan the Mayo-holic, who goes through 3 big bottles of mayonnaise a week. It sounds a little bit like you, actually, that.
Sounds like me. I do like mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I do like... and ketchup. I don't discriminate.
No. Well, look, joining us to go through what's making the news in consumer affairs expert Georgie Frost and writer and columnist Emma Wolfe. Now, look, one of the stories that we missed out from our little roundup there is what's on the front and also inside the Mail, Emma. Hate preachers are going to be barred from coming to Britain. This ties in with the bigger story as well of general levels of extremism. Look, what's going on here? It's quite a bit.
It does. Well, I think this follows on Rishi Sunak's emergency statement. You remember on the steps of Downing Street, we were all very excited. What's happening on a Friday afternoon? You know, this is very unusual. He made a statement basically, you know, raising the issue that is worrying many, many people at the moment about extremism and about the divisions in our society and about this, you know, feeling of Islamic extremism and the marches and all of this. So now we have this announcement, another one, I feel, another one of these government kind of knee-jerk reactions with not that much detail, not that much meat on the bones. Hate preachers will be blocked from entering the UK under new plans drawn up by the government amid a shocking increase in extremist activity. So they're going to be identified... I mean, you would have thought they'd be doing this before, frankly. This is what worries me. But anyway, extremists are going to be identified and prevented from entering from countries including Afghanistan, Pakistan and Indonesia. And those on the list will be automatically refused entry to the UK. Am I missing something here?
Well, this is it. I mean, I'm just reading again here now. Well, shock horror, you know, we do already have laws in place to stop this.
Again,
it's not been
it's like the demo laws, isn't it? It's like these laws exist. You just need to enforce them. And as we know, the Home Office is singularly not fit for purpose. If you look at immigration, if you look at the borders, if you look at visas being granted to fake care homes, everything in the past few weeks has demonstrated that actually the Home Office really needs root and branch reform, if not demolishing and starting again.
Georgie, I mean, it is a very concerning thing for a lot of people, isn't it? What they see either on the streets or this continued terror threat that we are hearing a lot about.
Yeah, of course, but I'm drawn to this in the Telegraph, which says ministers also believe they can use existing national security powers to boost efforts for people to bar people from entering the UK. We already have these powers in place. I think a lot of what we're going to hear from Rishi Sunak over the next few days, we've got a budget coming up, of course, is going to be... why on earth didn't you do this over the last 14 years? They're going to be trying to position themselves that this country could lead us forward with security, with economics, and actually the question has to be, well, you've been in long enough.
Yeah.
Why on earth weren't you doing this anyway? This seems a no-brainer, as Emma said.
I mean, how many stories do we have to hear and read about where there's someone who's a supporter of Hamas living in social housing in a part of London or Birmingham or wherever? I mean, this sort of stuff is just crazy.
And we know that there are imams in mosques who are very, very organised and who are, as Georgie said, already preaching racism, incitement, using intimidation or violence to undermine the democratic process. These are the people that we need to, A, stop being in our country, but also crack down if they are spreading this kind of hatred. We don't need these divisions. We don't need the right and the left or the centre-right and the centre-left to be at war with each other. It's when we have extremism on the streets that people do feel genuinely frightened.
I think and again, as Robert Jenrick addresses in the Mail today. You know, we have to try to get around this idea that simply raising the issue is in some way Islamophobic.
Yeah.
Genuine Islamophobia, obviously no place for it. But talking about radical Islamist extremism and the fact we don't want that in Britain, that is a perfectly legitimate conversation to be had. And Robert Jenrick does raise that. Shall we just shift it on a little bit now and just talk about some stuff to do with Jeremy Hunt? Immoral Whitehall waste, Georgie?
Yeah, can I just repeat what I said earlier?
Yeah.
Just repeat, play. What have they been doing for the last 14 years? Yes, look, they're talking about Jeremy Hunt is going to be desperate to find some extra cash down the back of the sofa to throw at us in the budget on Wednesday. One of those things he's talking about is cutting down on what is called immoral Whitehall waste. So are they going to slash tens of thousands of civil service jobs? Now, one of the things he points out is a waste of spending is this woke spending by Whitehall departments where civil servants' time and resources are spent on equality, diversity and inclusion hires and initiatives. I think a lot of people will agree there's a lot of waste there, without doubt. I'm a little bit concerned if you look more into it. You know, we do have a bit of a productivity issue and it does go to the heart of the government as well, so getting more tech involved. But one of the suggestions here is saying interviewing crime witnesses and victims via video call to speed up police investigations. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm thinking some victims that have gone through some harrowing experience. What, on a Zoom call? I mean...
Yeah.
Perhaps not the most appropriate thing. But it's interesting, though, isn't it, Emma? Because during the Brexit years, the number of civil servants did balloon because there was more work to do to get that done. Now they're trying to reduce the number of civil servants. I do wonder how they're going to be able to do this and how much pushback there will be from within the civil service.
Of course there will. The blob likes to blob things up. Look, I mean, across the papers today, we've got Jeremy Hunt. Apparently he's going to the £300 million tax rate on second homeowners as well, who let out their properties for holiday lets. He's going to cut Whitehall waste. I mean, he's really desperate. They really are scrabbling around down the backs of the sofas.
They are. And they're being warned elsewhere that they can't cut taxes.
They can't.
It's worth noting as well that I think Labour and I've done several pieces on a series of Keir Starmer's screeching U-turns in the last few weeks. One of the things that they don't appear to be U-turning on is their position on non-dom status. And now it looks as though Jeremy Hunt's going to copy that, which is remarkable, really, when you think about it. It's supposed to be a Conservative Chancellor, doesn't really appear to be behaving in a particularly Conservative way.
Yeah, it's straight out of the George Osborne playbook. Take the strategies off Labour first, nip it in the bud there. I mean, it's become very politicised because, of course, Rishi Sunak and his wife over the non-dom status. If the government is going to talk about cutting taxes and driving productivity, etc., we are a heavily the most taxed nation. This is a Conservative government. The way to get money to cut people's taxes, 2p off income tax or whatever, is possibly not to tax other people. I mean, I could be wrong. You're just raising taxes elsewhere.
The burden slightly.
I just think it's going to be... Look, one thing we need to do in this country, and I will go back to this, is we need to drive innovation and productivity, entrepreneurs and business spirit to get the country going. They need to... If they need to cut back on things like non-dom status, there's going to need to be some sort of middle ground. If they just say, right, that's it, you have to pay taxes here, you have to pay taxes abroad, who's going to come here?
Well, I was reading how non-doms are moving to Italy because they may face more taxes here.
Coast.
And this is the problem. People spend money here, don't they? So we don't want to badly affect our own economy because of ideological reasons.
No, but
Talking about something that affects our economy, ministers apparently failed to consider the long-term pain of lockdown, didn't they? It's another story in the Telegraph today. This
is a really interesting one, and I'm afraid I was reading this last night going, who knew? How many of us were saying this? How many of us were... Well, actually, I wasn't brave enough to stand up and say at the beginning of lockdowns. Everyone seemed to be going along with it. But so many academics, so many scientists, so many in the media who have a lot to answer for were silenced or just weren't brave enough to stand up and say, do you know what? And especially scientists, to say, because it would have damaged their research grants, their prospects for promotion, all of that. Anyway, the focus of this article is about the damage that it did, especially to children, especially to young people, who are suffering now an epic epidemic of mental illness, who are hooked on antidepressants like nothing else. Babies like mine that was born in lockdown, what did that do to them? Lockdown, social isolation for babies. What about young people? Not in contact, not in education, but not in contact with other people. Teenagers who didn't do their GCSEs and A-levels, who are now sitting on those horrific jobless lists,
I remember
and who
talking
may
about
well
this.
be out of work for life. And so many of us were thinking this. And when we got to the end of the first and the second lockdown, I mean, it's all a blur, isn't it? But it really got to the point where, hang on a minute, do we really need to lock down this country again for what I think was a negligible risk, a serious risk to some vulnerable
Well, I remember making these
groups.
points at the time and again, on the media and elsewhere, and people just didn't want to hear it.
I know, and
People did
Emily,
not
the media was
want to hear it.
obsessed with locking down.
Because the argument is so strong to counter that. Oh, so you're arguing people should die?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're like...
Ridiculous way to phrase
It isn't ridiculous, but, I mean, I couldn't agree with Emma more here. It's like, the really disturbing thing for me here, apart from the fact we've got 8 million NHS waiting lists, is the silence of scientists here to try and get research grants for their... And it's mentioned here in this article by Professor Robert Dingwall, a former government COVID advisor, who said, I'm not surprised. I don't blame those scientists for keeping their heads down, as they had a career to build.
But it's
Are our
ridiculous. Science
scientists...
shouldn't be
Think about
political.
it. Think about the power that scientists have. Think about what they do. If they are keeping quiet over something so
And the way that they
fundamental-
became politically involved, scientists becoming
desperately
politically involved in the
concerning.
process.
And what did everyone say? Whenever anyone would make the kind of points that we've made here, say, oh, where's your science degree? Where is it? Where's your medical degree?
Don't you care about the old grannies?
You care
Of
about-
course we do.
People with a science degree
But look
were
at
not
the
saying what they really thought.
And look at the long-term damage in terms of those other excess deaths. But, I mean, literally, cancers that weren't diagnosed, that weren't treated. People are now dying and carrying on dying. Look at the suicides. Look at the lives that were ruined. Look at the businesses that have gone out of trade and will never return.
And it undermines that. The next time that there is something, anything, and there's a need for experts, it does undermine it, because people remember these things.
But we need to make sure that we know how we will respond when there's another pandemic, or whatever we call it. And
we had government planning.
Yeah,
this was the ridiculous thing. Where
in
did that
reality,
go?
how is it going to be next time? Because I think if we ever face lockdowns like that again...
Isn't that what the COVID inquiry should have looked at? Is these sorts of questions, is the
Well,
silence...
it won't.
and silence. But after the first lockdown, fair enough, nobody blames you for just reacting as the rest of the world were.
Yeah.
But we had a second, we had a third.
Wow.
It kept going.
I remember doing a piece on radio where I used to work about the Nepalese variant, which turned out not to exist, and that was going to be the reason for one of the lockdowns. It didn't exist.
It's like talking about the common cold and telling everybody to stay indoors and go indoors. And you forget what it was like, don't you? You forget. I remember leaving my house and going under the window so that my neighbour didn't see me. What was all that about? It's just madness that a government could have told us to stay indoors and only go out.
Outdoor gyms being cordoned off.
about what constitutes
Park
a
benches
proper meal.
being taped
that was
off.
a real nadir.
Well, look, thankfully we've got our freedom now, and so does Queen Camilla. We've just got a couple of minutes to talk about this. So Queen Camilla is apparently going to be off on her holes. I'm not sure if we've got any idea where she's going. Does anyone know anything about
Sunshine trip, but she is taking a private flight somewhere. She's done 13 official. She's really been putting a shift in. She's the last royal standing. Everyone else is in
Have a
hospital.
nice holiday. She deserves it.
Where do you think she's going?
I don't know. Somewhere lovely, let's hope.
Simon suggested, the travel expert, suggested that Egypt's
Sharm el
nice this
Sheikh.
time of year. So she might be off to there. I've heard Tenerife is nice this
I
time
think
of
she
year.
might go somewhere further afield. I think she might go to a private island, St Bart's or somewhere like that.
Bit of mystique.
Have a word with Pippa Middleton's hubby.
Yeah.
He owns St Bart's.
Well, that's true. That's true. Well, good for her. But I think we all wish her well, don't we? I think.
We do wish her well.
She's had rather a lot on. Really, really, really great start to this paper review. So thank you very much, both of you. I'm really looking forward to cracking on again in the hours to come, as well as we pick through more of the day's news. There's also a heck of a lot about anti-anxiety drugs being prescribed to 8 million and linked to hundreds of deaths as well. And
But I want to know what people at home think about this war on woke. I mean, how many times have we heard this from government, that there's going to be a war on woke, a war on waste in Whitehall, and then what happens? The costs just continue to balloon. But is this time the time Jeremy Hunt is going to get to grips with this? What do you think? gbviews@gbnews.com. And, of course, if you've read Robert Jenrick's piece in the Mail on Sunday, we'll be talking about that too. He's got some strong stuff to say. He says, why does the left consider it Islamophobic to want to expel the cancer of extremism from Britain? Well, there's a question.
Yeah, this is an absolutely massive story. We're going to be delving in with this at the top of the next hour. We're going to be talking about whether or not actually it is time to stand up now. We've just heard from our paper reviewers there about this idea to get rid of radical preachers. I know a huge amount of our viewers and listeners are concerned about the ones that are already here. In the wake of the October 7th attacks, we were seeing some of these videos coming out of mosques around the country, and that looks incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and it makes you think, doesn't it? How prevalent are these kind of ideas, and what impact are they having on society? Rishi Sunak, in the week, said, let's stand up against extremism. Let's really try to make sure the police are policing these protests and not just managing them. We had 12 arrests, this particular one on Saturday, apparently. So, OK, maybe that's a step in the right direction. But I just worry that we've let the genie out of the bottle.
And the war on Gaza very much being used as a recruitment device to extremism, to terror groups. That's in the mail too, so we'll be getting stuck into that.
Absolutely. We're talking about that. We'll be giving you the royal latest. We're also going to be talking as well about all the latest from the Brit Awards, some surprise winners, some shocking outfits and a load of that.
Some very shocking outfits, as usual. I think that's what you've got to do, though. I mean, there were some very revealing outfits too. I mean, I don't know how you have the confidence to wear that down the red carpet, some of these dresses. They're not really dresses, they're lingerie.
Can I just quickly tease the debate we've got? Should all 30-year-olds in Britain be given £10,000 by the government? Discuss after the weather.